Okay, let's talk about sources of arsenic. Like, how could you be exposed to it? So, first of all, there are many different forms of arsenic, right? So, you want to remember there's a fixed amount of arsenic that occurs on the planet, and that arsenic is found in many different chemical forms. And those different chemical forms, we can categorize them as organic or inorganic, and there are hundreds of them. We also need to remember that arsenic can change, like the form that the arsenic is occurring in can change from one to another. So, for example, microbes in the soil or in the water or in a fish gut could add a methyl group, which is a CH3, to an inorganic form of arsenic, changing it into an organic form of arsenic. That would be functionally a detoxification reaction, right? But the reverse can also occur. So, the forms are not static, is what I'm trying to say. All right. So, just sort of looking generally, though, like what are the sort of sources, which means like way to mobilize the arsenic into somehow like how a human might be exposed to it. When a volcano blows up, the arsenic that is trapped inside the volcanic rock is liberated into the atmosphere, and then that arsenic can travel globally, and it will end up in many other places beyond the volcano. There are waters, naturally occurring waters, that contain very, very high levels of arsenic. New Hampshire is one such place. So is the city of Bangladesh is also a place that is naturally has like very high levels of arsenic in the groundwater, right? And therefore in the drinking water for people. There's arsenic entrained or found within minerals and rocks, right? For example, pegmatites and pyrites and other sources. So it's found in soils. We use arsenic in wood preserving, and we liberate arsenic into the atmosphere when we manipulate things that we mine out of the ground. So the act of mining will liberate arsenic into water and into the air and atmosphere. Smelting, which is heating rocks up to release metals, to do things like, make copper wiring or get the nickel to make steel, stainless steel with, right? So smelting will release arsenic into the atmosphere. We specifically use chemicals with arsenic in them as herbicides and as pesticides. So then if we get exposed to those herbicides or pesticides, we're arsenic exposed, right? It is in some food additives, shockingly enough. Certain forms of arsenic are found in some food processing steps in food industries. And oddly, arsenic is used for medicinal purposes in more than one way still, okay? Coal burning, it's kind of randomly tucked into this area, right? This isn't the others category. When we burn coal, we release arsenic. So there are many different ways that you could be exposed to arsenic. Not really shown on this slide is eating. So there are relatively high levels of arsenic in certain seafoods, although they are organic forms of arsenic. And then a lot of rice is quite highly contaminated with very toxic forms of arsenic. So if we look at this, right, if you have arsenic in the environment and it's either in natural sources like volcanic rocks, right, or just certain bedrocks that then gets liberated into the water, or it's released from those rocks through human-caused activities, anthropogenic activities, that arsenic can enter groundwater and then we can drink it, and that's a way to be exposed. That arsenic can be directly mobilized into foods, plants that are growing in arsenic-contaminated soil or sediments. And certain grains will actually magnify the amount of, not magnified, but accumulate arsenic compounds into the plant tissue out of the soil. So the arsenic will go from the soil or sediment, in the case of a rice paddy, into the roots, up into the plant, and then be up in the grains, right? And so rice is a classic example of this. We have a lot of problems with arsenic contaminated rice. Rice is a plant that's quite good at mobilizing a lot of metals out of its growth matrix and moving them into the rice, something to really think about given how much we rely as human beings on rice as a food crop. So then when we feed animals off grain products that are contaminated with arsenic, we biomagnify the amount of arsenic in our foodstuffs, right? So we start off with it in the soil at a certain concentration. We concentrate it into the plant. The animals eat a lot of plants, so they get even more arsenic per gram of animal tissue in the meat and the milk. And that can be another way that humans are exposed to arsenic. That's a real concern. All right, so in summary from this introductory lesson on arsenic, thinking about it from a toxicological perspective, arsenic is a naturally occurring element in a category called a metalloid. It's the 20th most abundant element on the planet. Arsenic forms chemical bonds with many other elements, so there are many forms of arsenic. The two major types are organic and inorganic. We talked about what that means. Inorganic forms of arsenic are the most toxic, but all forms of arsenic should be considered toxic and treated with care, because one form can be converted to another form with a variety of biogeochemical processes in the environment. We can be exposed to arsenic by inhaling it, for example, inhalation of arsine gas or particles of, dust or rocks that contain other forms of arsenic, or by eating or drinking it through ingestion. It's not very often that we absorb it like dermally, so mostly it's ingestion and inhalation is our routes of exposure, okay? Arsenic is highly toxic. Some forms have very low acute or killing doses, for example, arsine. And chronic health effects occur in the entire body, one of the most serious being various forms of cancer.